Oh God, let's just get this over with. This is Birds of a Feather 96, which is by Gail Simone, and it is remedial. I feel like I am punching down to even criticise this. There are many problems with the writing. It's not a simple case of it doesn't work for me. There are enormous failings of the written word presented in this issue. Before we begin, how about a quick little guessing game? What do you think this issue opens with? A. Food, B. Cats, or C. Hypocritical feminist agenda? If you guessed food, then you are correct. We have the first 3 pages of this issue focus on food. Yummy, yummy food. Gail Simone needs her sustenance. The characters go to visit Blue Beetles' grave because Blue Beetles died in Infinite Christmas. He was shot in the head by Max Power. And so we have some of the worst written women in comics right here. Gail Simone, she is... I didn't go into this with the idea of shitting all over it. I thought, oh, it'll be okay. It'll be mediocre. It might have some charm or some decent bits. Her scripting is appalling. Here is a good way to view it. Try to forget that a woman wrote this. Convince yourself a bloke wrote it. You would immediately recognise that these female characters are so immature and juvenile, and they come across as children. They are teenage girls teasing each other. They are teenage girls being catty. It's incredibly unendearing, and it makes the writer look like they have limited abilities when it comes to the actual writing. I will explain what they are talking about here, and you will understand why in a few pages. They are talking about how Barbara Altman had a will they, won't they thing with Blue Beetles in Chuck Dickens's run on Birds of a Feather. They were presented as a potential couple, and then it got scrapped and reduced to what it is in this issue. And what it is reduced to in this issue is a non-stop barrage of Canary teasing Barbara about it, saying that the two probably had cyber sex, tee-hee. That is it. That is all she says. She says it about 6 different times in the issue, at different intervals. It is fucking miserable. Gail Simone is many, many things, and one thing she is not is funny. And part of the reason she is not funny is because she will run Summer into the ground. Now, what right do I have to say Summer is or isn't funny? I would argue a lot more than Gail Simone, or a standard Gail Simone reader. Did you spend a decade working around the professional world of comedy? No, you probably didn't. Even by 2006, which is when this came out, the mere mention of cybersex wasn't enough to be funny. Cybersex wasn't a new thing. They did this cybersex tee joke in Friends about 10 years before this issue. And at least they had the decency to only do it the one time. This brings it up every chance they get with no new additional content or context. It's pathetic. There is something else pathetic in this scene, but I will explain what we are dealing with here first. We have a character called Janice Ian, a goth high school girl with magic abilities. She was apparently introduced in an earlier issue of Birds of a Feather by Gail Simone, and I did not know that. I mixed up my dates and thought this was her introduction. I know her from Day of Vegans, which she plays a prominent role in as a plot device. I am doing Gail Simone a favour and skipping to the next page rather than focusing on what I wanted to say about this scene. This page instead shows us her powers, and it feels that is more useful to explain after seeing when she first appeared. Her powers are one of the more exciting things about her. She can copy the powers of another magically powered character, but the twist is when she copies them, then the original is stripped of those powers. For example, when she copies Spectre's powers, Spectre is depowered. His powers are instead channeling themselves through Janice Ian. Then we have some Sorry, Gail Simone. I didn't write this page down on my page breakdowns. This is where I am going to mention it. At first, I thought she was writing Janice as a high schooler, which is obviously what is required. But it dawned on me about 3 or 4 panels in, she isn't. It's Gail Simone. Gail Simone still has the high school mentality. She thinks the other girls, the pretty girls, the popular girls, the normal girls, they are all evil. The telling sign is that the world around Janice Ian conforms to Janice Ian's and Gail Simone's well, I am better than them anyway attitudes. I would have liked to talk about that a bit more actually, but I actually meant to say that some villains arrive. They have been spying on and tracking Janice ever since Day of Vegans. This ties it into another Gail Simone project, Villains United. And I am footnoting all of this comic, and that is going to be my next point. Gail Simone is an arrogant writer. Throughout all of this, with the exception of Janice, who I would say is established to an audience, almost okay. We will come back to the problem with her presentation, but every single thing about this is treated as if you know what is going on. You know every character, you know all these plot lines that she is referencing. Not a single character is adequately named. It is not clear at any point who is on the team of Birds of a Feather. The things the story focuses on are tee-hee, cybersex, food, and Gail Simone's hatred of women who don't conform to a hollow mockery of feminist ideals. Few other things about this page. We casually drop one of the characters' real names, Lady Blackhat, and if you hadn't read another issue of this, you would have no idea who Zinda refers to. We obviously have more cyber sex jokes here. Canary calls Barbara a cyber tramp. Fucking embarrassing, this. I also want to say that it was at this point I actually counted how many pages I had left. If it was more than 10, I wasn't going to bother finishing this. The bad guys manipulate Janice Ian into thinking the birds of a feather are looking to cause her harm. And after this, Janice, she has a one-shot which I have lying around somewhere, which is also by Gail Simone. Then she joins another Gail Simone team. And I might be misremembering, but she is also in Range in L. So at least someone else got to write her somewhere. I don't think Janice is the worst invention ever. Credit to Gail Simone for that, at least. I did say there was one facet of Janice Ian that was set up poorly in this issue, and that is her powers. We get the basic idea that she can mimic powers, but absolutely nothing beyond that. And here, this is like the big action scene. She mimics Wonder Woman's powers. Or maybe Wonder Girl's powers. But we haven't had her powers appropriately explained. So it doesn't feel as enormous as it should. The other thing is, remember, we spent 3 pages on food and however many pages on giggling at the idea of cybersex. The big action set pieces, they are made to seem insignificant, being condensed into tiny panels. We have the bottom right panel shows Janice Ian hanging Canary, like lynching style, with Wonder Woman's lasso, or Wonder Girl's lasso. And that is good imagery. And that is, this whole page is action that is buried away. This should be 3 pages worth of fighting, not quickly getting through things. And this is where we leave off the story, with a tiny panel of Canary being hanged. Continues next issue. The covers are by Jeremy Ordinary. The last thing we have is, gasp, the return of Batgirl. No, it's someone else who wants to be Batgirl. I did want to try and stay away from my overall feelings about Gail Simone or her feminism in this. Even when I was talking about how she writes women or how she hates women, I didn't want to get sidetracked talking about how flimsy feminist ideals are and how they don't apply to herself or refrigerators. I've done that shit before. But what I will say here is Gail Simone carved out a career for herself in professional comic books through the espousing of certain rhetoric, I always like to think to myself that Gail Simone can at least write. They wouldn't just hand her stuff because she has been loud. It's a professional industry. They cannot just give random people work. There must be some basic skill or talent. That is a requirement. I honestly, I don't think Gail Simone was ever qualified to be a writer. She is at best a glorified Wattpad user. This is bad in many different ways. This reads like a teenage girl's writing most of the time. That's it in a nutshell. Gail Simone, she is someone who has never actually grown, matured, or developed past high school. As for this issue, there's little in the way of good here. It's avoiding being torn up, but that isn't to say that it is worth reading. I'll give it 7 cybersex teehees up.